So we're waiting for Amy. Is Amy here? And Amanda.
Amanda's coming in now.
Okay. One, two, three. I know Stana's here. I just don't see her now.
I'm here. I just didn't think anyone wanted to see me eating.
Okay, thanks, Stana. Okay, I'm gonna text Amy and this might be, Lyle, are you here? I see one college number. Okay, I was just gonna give it another minute because I think everyone's coming.
I can't talk.
No, now you can. You're unmuted.
Okay, Amy's having a hard time getting in. I'm just trying to describe to her what I did, so.
Hello?
Nolan, Lyle's on.
Okay, hi Lyle. No, Jane, if I start, would you be able to text Amy and tell her how to get in with those numbers?
Yeah.
I just let Amy in, so she
Oh, you
should get
did?
in.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Very
great.
good.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, terrific. Okay, I think we're all here. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We're gonna hold off on the minutes till the next meeting. They were quite long and there's some adjustments that need to be made. So we're not gonna go forward with the meeting. But we're going to begin public comment on the scoping session, on the scoping of the Homeland Towers project. And we're gonna have an introduction by our attorney, Rick Goldman.
Sure. So as Adele said, this is the opportunity for the public to weigh in on the scope of what should be studied in the environmental impact statement that's going to be conducted. As a preface, I'll tell you the description of the action. The applicant, Homeland Towers, is proposing to construct a major wireless telecommunications commercial cellular tower structure consisting of a 150-foot monopole, a fenced-in equipment compound, and a 12-foot wide, 900-foot long gravel access road with a turnaround area. The application requires a use variance, that is a special utility use variance, a special permit, site plan approval, and a town wetland and watercourse protection permit. It's on property having frontage along Jansen Road within the town of New Paltz. The property contains 44.7 plus or minus acres and is known on the town tax maps as section 86.8, block 2, lot 16, and the property is located within the town's R1 residence zoning district. The planning board previously determined that there are some potential significant adverse environmental impacts associated with this application, and therefore made a positive declaration under seeker as its determination of significance. At that point in time, they require the applicant to prepare an environmental impact statement, which actually is composed of both a draft environmental impact statement and a final environmental impact statement. And then the planning board will have a finding statement at the very end. So this is at the beginning of that process, and that is the scope of what is to be studied. As is typical and as requested by the planning board, the applicant proposed a draft scope and submitted that in September sometime. I don't recall the exact date, September 22nd. And the planning board now has to finalize that scope. During the process, there is to be public input into the process. It could have been done by simply sending comments in writing, or to allow something such as this as a public scoping session, which is what the planning board opted for. This is the opportunity for the public to weigh in on the proposed draft scope, to determine what should be studied and what information should be provided in the draft environmental impact statement. There is what we have determined is to have each person have 3 minutes, that they will have an opportunity in the public to weigh in. This is not the opportunity to simply say this project shouldn't be built or this project should be built. This is something that's very specific to what should be studied. There will be another public hearing after the draft environmental impact statement for people to weigh in at that time on all aspects of the environmental impact statement, as well as the site plan and special permit and the wetlands watercourse permit. But tonight is just restricted to the public participation as to what is thought to be studied. The planning board went through a lot of work, went through a very detailed examination of the environmental assessment form, part 2, in order to determine in their minds what are the potential significant adverse environmental impacts. The ones that they have determined are the following: that and all of these are going to be discussed and studied in the environmental impact statement. So if what you want studied is already in here, then it's covered. Owing to the number of trees proposed to be removed under either of the proposed access alternatives, the proposed action may substantially interfere with nesting, breeding, foraging, or overwintering habitat for the predominant species that occupy or use the project site. Number 2, there's 5 of them. The proposed action's 150-foot commercial cellular tower structure, together with its associated components and its visual impact, is significantly different from and in sharp contrast to the current surrounding residential land use pattern. 3, the proposed action's 150-foot cellular tower structure, together with its associated components, is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan and the town zoning regulations, at the proposed project site as it is outside of the zoning district specified for the location of cellular towers and will be visible at various locations in the town, accessible to the public, as identified in the balloon test photos and is noted by planning board members who are thoroughly familiar with the proposed site and its surrounding areas. Number 4, the proposed actions 150-foot commercial cellular tower structure together with its associated components is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character of the surrounding land uses, and will be visible at various locations in the town accessible to the public as identified in the balloon test photos and is noted by the planning board members who are familiar with the proposed site and surrounding areas. And finally, 5, the 150-foot commercial cellular tower structure together with its associated components is inconsistent with the character of the existing natural landscape and will be visible at various locations in the town accessible to the public, as identified in the balloon test photos and the planning board notations. So those are the significant adverse environmental impacts, potential significant adverse environmental impacts that the planning board has already identified. They are also going to be asking for some specific information and modify the draft scope accordingly. But now is the public's time to weigh in as to what information they would like in the environmental impact statement and any other impacts that they think ought to be studied. As I said, you'll have 3 minutes. And at the end of the 3 minutes, with a brief warning, the microphone will be muted and we'll go on to the next person who's going to be commenting. The primary goals of scoping are to focus the environmental impact statement on potentially significant adverse impacts and eliminate consideration of those impacts that are irrelevant or are not significant. And as I said, the planning board did this by its analysis, largely what is contained in the draft scope, although it's anticipated that there will be changes to the draft scope by the planning board. Now's the time for the public to weigh in. And John, I will allow you to go through. Before I go through that directly, I don't see a need for it, but does the applicant wish to make any kind of statement at the beginning of this?
Good evening, Robert Gaudioso with law firm of Snyder and Snyder on behalf of the applicants, Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless. As you mentioned, we did submit a draft scope back on, I believe it was September 21st. I'm sorry, September 22nd. On September 21st, we did also file a dispute related to the fees. We haven't seen a response to that yet. We also did request under the secret regulations an estimate of the cost to review the environmental impact statement. And we await that as well. We believe the scope that we submitted, the draft scope that we submitted covers all of the relevant items, but we look forward to the planning board's final scoping document so that way we can proceed with the draft environmental impact statement. Thank you.
All right, John, you can start letting, unless any planning board member wants to make any initial statements, we'll just start listening to the public.
Okay, I'm not sure how this was worked out, the public. Because
So if it's okay with you, I'll just go in the order that it's on in the participant screen. I'll identify them and they can unmute themselves and give their comments and then go back on mute when they're done.
great. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So the first person is telephone number ending in 3235. If you would like to speak, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
And if there's no requirement to speak, if you're just calling in order to listen to the proceedings, that's fine. If you just let us know so we can move on to the next person.
Okay, why don't you move on?
Okay. Telephone number ending in 8464.
Can you unmute them?
I can only ask them to unmute.
Okay, why don't we move on?
Telephone number ending in 6800. Telephone number ending in 7615. All right. Cheryl Englehart. Okay. Chris Harp.
Yes. And I really don't have a whole lot to say on this, but it was just, obviously people know me as the beekeeper, and I'm concerned about the effect of electromagnetic waves, et cetera, as well as the gigabytes and the microwaves affecting my industry in the honeybee industry. There is not a whole lot of information saying that is negative or positive, but it's just a concern, which is why I tuned in tonight to watch that, and that's about all I really have to say. It. If anybody does have information about it being negatively affected, or if the Environmental Secret Review Board were to find that there was some kind of negative impact, it would be, to my advantage, obviously. So that's all I have to say on this.
All right, thank you. Elise Solomon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd just like to thank the planning board for this opportunity. I've spoken on this subject a few times in these meetings. I live directly next door and closest to the proposed cell tower. I would just like to speak to the two points about the cell tower and the aesthetic impact on our neighborhood. There's no way that Homeland Towers is going to make this less significant. You can make it look like a tree, you can make it look like whatever you want, but it's going to loom 50 to 75 feet above the tallest trees in our neighborhood. I submitted a letter on the 31st of March about the balloon test of March 22nd, of which I could see the red and blue balloons from every point of my property, as well as all of my neighbors. This does not belong in our residential neighborhood. There's no proof that this cell tower commercial structure needs to go here. And I would really hope that the planning board and the zoning board will protect our neighborhood from this commercial structure that does not belong here. And I don't believe that there's any way to make the impact less significant on our neighborhood. Thank you.
David Brownstein.
No comment.
Thank you. I have one person named just Ingrid. Okay. Someone named Ingrid Beer.
Okay, great, thank you. Wasn't prepared to speak, but I agree with the comments that everyone has said so far. I think aesthetically, this is just ruinous for the neighbors around this proposed towers. And I am really concerned about the wildlife, the bee life, and all of the other life around these towers. So there's a lot of information about cell towers, but there's also so many unknowns, and I don't think we should risk dire consequences for unknowns. So thank you very much. And also, where would the profit lie in this project? And that would be something that I'd like to, have looked at very carefully and shown to the public, because if the public really doesn't want it, who would be profiting from it? Thank you.
Christy?
I'm taking the minutes. I'm not speaking.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Manny Vicente? Matthew Allen?
I'm just here representing the applicant, so I have no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
I have no comment. Thank you.
You. Rose?
I'm a member of the ENCB, and I support the ENCB statement that Ted's going to read, but I'm also a member of the neighborhood of the, I live on Du Bois Road, and I am a beekeeper. And I am concerned about wildlife and about local pollinators. I'm also concerned about the town code. The town code says that something like this would not be built in a residential area. And so they're going to have to ask for a variance. And I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of putting this in a place where that in an industrial area, like by the thruway, and not in this residential area.
Silas Rossi?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Silas. I live at 4 Jennifer Court, which is only a few hundred yards from the proposed tower site. And I'd like to first just thank the planning board for taking this matter so seriously and looking into it as extensively as you all have and taking the time for that. So thank you. Yeah, my concerns are many with this proposed tower, the least of which is not the migration of birds, as were mentioned, passing through here. We have a lot of both waterfowl and highland birds here. I'm also worried about the amphibious life, frogs and salamanders, among others. And I think in that same environmental kind of concern overall are all the residents here. There are many, many children and young folks who live in the area that I think we just don't have much data on how exactly that will be affecting them as they grow up. So I'm really concerned about that. I'm also concerned with the visual impact of the towers. I'm concerned about resale value of my home. And as someone who quite literally moved to this town in this very neighborhood and spends a lot of time outdoors, I work as a rock climbing guide here in the Gunks. I moved specifically to this area to be outside and close to nature, and chose New Paltz because I believe the town has values that are in line with mine about being in touch and with the natural world. So I hope that this proposal is rejected and we can continue to live the lives that we have so far here in this lovely neighborhood. The last thing I wanted to mention is that Cheryl Engelhardt actually is available if you want to call her name again. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
can
you.
I just, before we go on, I just want to remind everyone that this is a scoping session and the items that the attorney read should be what you're thinking about and how and what you think we would be able to investigate further based on those 5 areas. There'll be time for other comments throughout this process, but currently during this scoping session, we're only here to find ways to investigate the areas that are listed. Okay, thank you.
Cheryl, if you want to speak, go ahead.
Hey, thank you very much. Sorry that I missed the first time you called, and I appreciate you calling on me again. For an environmental impact research project, I think that it would be really important to know to a certain amount of certainty the effects of the usage of the tower, meaning Verizon's intentions with 4G, 5G, all potential future usage of the tower, potential emissions to the neighbors. I'm married to Silas. We live at 4 Jennifer Court. We saw the balloon, and I have the same concerns for the effects on not just the humans, but also embryos and fetuses, potential pregnancies of the usage of the cell tower, and also of the wildlife around it and young wildlife. Based on, that would be my concern, and what I would love to see in an environmental impact report is the effect of the usage of the tower, besides everything else everyone said about the actual tower itself, destroying the aesthetics and the land around it. Thank you.
Ted from the ENCB.
Evening. Thank you. My name is Ted Nitz. I'm a member of the Environmental Conservation Board of the town of New Paltz. I'm going to read a letter that was authorized by our committee and signed by our chair. Dear Chair, members of and the Town Planning Board, the town of New Paltz Environmental Conservation Board respectfully submits the following comments with regards to the scope of the environmental impact statement to be prepared for the Homeland Towers LLC cell tower project proposed at 60 Jansen Road. The Planning Board found that owing to the number of trees proposed to be removed under either of the proposed access alternatives, the proposed action may substantially interfere with nesting / breeding, foraging, or overwintering habitat for the predominant species that occupy or use the project site. Barton and Lojudas prepared a habitat impact statement dated September 4th, 2020, which evaluated potential habitat for threatened and endangered species. The ENCB recommends that future habitat assessments commissioned by the Planning Board follow the town's habitat assessment guidelines adopted by the Planning Board in 2006, and also in which the ENCB updated in 2017, which include assessments of species of special concern and species of greatest conservation need identified in New York State's Wildlife Action Plan. In particular, on this site, the ENCB recommends that potential impacts to the spotted turtle be evaluated. There are a number of known spotted turtle populations around New Paltz. This species is currently being evaluated by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service as a candidate for the federal endangered species list. It is a high priority species of greatest conservation need in the state of New York. Spotted turtles migrate between various wetland and upland habitats during the course of the year and could use habitats found on and adjacent to this site. Potential impacts to forest breeding birds should also be evaluated and considered species of greatest conservation need species that have been documented in New Paltz. We give a reference, a website reference to those documentations within New Paltz. Lastly, we note that the project list or the project site, is very close to an intact habitat core mapped by Ulster County's Green Infrastructure Initiative. This is viewable using the county's parcel viewer. Forest fragmentation and the resulting edge effects to this core habitat area should also be evaluated. We thank you for your consideration of these comments. And again, the letter is signed by Ingrid Hackle, who's the chair of the Town of New Paltz Environmental Conservation Board, after being authorized by a majority vote of the committee.
Ted, has that already been submitted to the planning board?
I'm not sure if it is, but I'll make sure that it is sent to you one way or the other. I have a visual copy here. I'll make sure that it gets to you guys.
At a minimum, I think you have my email. Can you email that to me this evening?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Valerie. Terry Merrill.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'd just like to draw the board's attention to a group of 3 documents that I submitted back in June, and they're now on our town Dropbox. And it's in a folder called Neighbors Attorney. Now, this folder contains a cover letter that I wrote June 5th, explaining that 19 of the adjoining neighbors hired an attorney who specializes in helping municipalities like ours evaluate wireless projects, specifically and particularly those in residential neighborhoods. Now, our attorney submitted 2 documents for the board's use as they see fit. One of them was a memo in opposition. It detailed deficiencies that could be cited to deny the applications under the Telecommunications Act in 1996. And the second one is the one I want to draw your attention to right now. It's called the Exhibits in Opposition, and it contains 11 sections that are labeled letter A through letter K. Now, the first section, called Exhibit A, contains 23 letters that were written in opposition by many of us adjoining neighbors. Now, all of those letters characterize our neighborhood as bucolic, lush, natural, rural, and many similar terms. And these letters substantiate the adverse impact of the 15-story cell tower on the consistency with community character and visual impact. Now, a subset of these letters specifically highlight the town's, I'll say, well-constructed zoning regulations. And these letters substantiate the adverse impact of the tower on consistency with the community plans. So, so we respectfully ask if each of the board members would review our 23 heartfelt letters, which are particularly relevant right now, given where we are in the process. And finally, I just wanted to add that back in June, I personally hand-delivered to Board Secretary Pat Atkins a hard copy for each and every member of the of both boards, the ZBA and the Planning Board, that contain both the memo in opposition and the exhibits in opposition. So if you prefer to read our letters online, you can go to the town Dropbox for that folder and see that folder, Neighbors Attorney. Once again, it's in Exhibit A. And just FYI, earlier today, I submitted the comments that I am now making about this. I submitted them as an email, which includes a link to the Dropbox folder that I'm mentioning to make it easier for you, so that when that letter is posted on the Dropbox, you could just click on the link in my first sentence of that letter. That's all I've got. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Is there anyone that hasn't spoken that would like to?
Okay, maybe it's time to close public comment for the scoping for tonight. Okay, we're going to try and work on what areas in particular.
Adele?
Yes.
Adele, it'd probably be good if you have a motion to close the public scoping session.
Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public scoping session?
So moved.
Second,
Amy seconded.
Amy. Okay. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adele, if I might, I just want to make a couple of comments in response to some of the people so that expectations are understood. And this isn't to the planning board, this is to the public, is that the planning board must act within various constraints that it has on it, placed both not only in the town code, but also in state law and in federal law when we're dealing with telecommunications towers. One of those constraints is that this board cannot inquire or consider the RF emissions more than they have already done. The board has, through its telecommunications expert, had reviewed the RF emissions for this particular site, studied those, and importantly, compare those with what the FCC has opined are adequate and acceptable RF emissions. The planning board is not allowed to say that we don't think those are proper or they're outdated. We have to live with them, and if the planning board does not, and if they proceed forward, their decision would be overturned on that basis. So that is why RF emissions was not part of the scope that will be studied in the environmental impact statement. In a similar fashion, under state law, that the various impacts, including visual impacts, cannot be studied as to their impact on private properties. They can be studied with respect, and they have been studied, and they're going to be studied further in this environmental impact statement with respect to visual impact on areas that are publicly accessible, but not as to private properties. So those are also something that will not be included in the environmental impact statement. And also, the planning board is not allowed to consider as an impact a purely economic impact with respect to this cell tower. The economic, whether or not somebody's going to make a profit or not make a profit, or what their business plan is not something that is available to study under the environmental review regulations. And so those will not be included in the environmental impact statement process. That's it, Adele.
Okay. Okay, so I want to get to our planning board members. Amanda, you want to start? You need to unmute.
Many things, too many buttons to push at once. Okay. So I wanted to go back and take a look at the document that we're working with here, and the item that that has to deal with the impact of the clearing that's proposed with this project, particularly the tree cutting, but the impact in general on the habitat of the nesting, breeding, foraging, and overwintering for the predominant species that use or occupy the site. So we have had a preliminary habitat assessment that was conducted, but I think we need to recognize that that focused specifically on a few critical or endangered species, and did not by any means identify all of the species that might be using this habitat. And I think someone mentioned amphibians. Certainly there's reptiles, there's migratory birds, there's invertebrates of various kinds. So that I think we would like to see expanded on. to identify how this habitat is occupied and used by different species, what really makes up the entire class of predominant species. And we would like to use as ENCB pointed out, the habitat assessment guidelines that have been developed, and have that study conducted by appropriately experienced or expertise professionals that do habitat assessment in the Hudson Valley region.
Rick, how specific do we have to be with that? Is that enough of a statement for, or do we need to be more specific on what we want to study?
I can take that, what was just said, and it seemed like Amanda also wanted to include the spotted turtle and forest birds that were she referenced with respect to the ENCB, and also taking into account they should make as a reference, in addition to what is already in the draft scope, the town's habitat assessment updated by 2017. So, and as well as that, the study ought to be done by somebody with appropriate credentials that must be set forth. So that's enough that I can add that to the draft scope as part of the final scope.
Okay. Amanda, do you want to go on to the next point, or?
The consistency with community plans.
Well, no, the next point is visual impact. Maybe Jane. Jane, you want to take that?
Yes. I want to just make a couple of points about the visual impacts and the consistency with the community plans. The proposed tower at 150 or 155 feet would be the tallest structure in New Paltz outside of a wireless communications overlay district. So I would like to propose that it be considered by the applicant at the 140-foot height that was suggested by Mike Musso, our consultant, and that the applicant, and I think this is stated here in the scope, agree that it would not be made any higher. There is that ability to make it higher. And so that they would agree to limit the height of the tower. That would be one thing that would I'd like to see in that section. Additionally, I would like to see whether or not we could have additional tests done, balloon tests with more than one 4-foot balloon to better approximate the difference in scale between 4 feet and the actual width of the top of the tower array, which would range depending on the style of the tower from 23, I believe it is, to 33 or 35 feet, if we were talking about the monopole fir. And I would like to see if there could be arranged additional balloon test sites with either a balloon that more approximates the scale of the top of the tower to gauge the visibility, and or multiple balloons that would approximate the more represent the scale of the top of the tower, since that's 6 to 8 times larger than the balloon that was used approximately. Additionally, I think that's it for that part of it. Oh, also, I would like to see whether or not the farm silo style of the tower, which would make it fit into the community character definition would be considered by the applicant, and what how might that compare to the other two styles that were presented?
Okay, hold on one sec, somehow.
And I do also have additional photography that I would like to propose be taken with the additional scaled up balloon test, if that's possible.
Okay, now I did see Mike Musso, but now I don't see him. Is he here? I saw him a minute ago.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay, hi. My question is, Jane mentioned that in your reports, you thought a 140-foot tower might work. Was that the lowest tower you thought might work?
Yeah, we had received technical information for, I think, 121-foot center line, which would imply a 125-foot structure. And we feel that that's out. So this was a middle ground that would still look to accommodate co-location in the future. So yeah, we feel that that's the reasonable height to reduce to. They can't go below the tree line, as we've discussed here and at the Zoning Board of Appeals. They do need height. The technology is run on line of sight largely. So we felt that was a reasonable height of reduction. Not just because I felt like saying it, but because of the technical information that was provided.
Okay, and you feel that that's pretty much the lowest that would be reasonable?
I believe so.
Okay, all right, thank you. Jane?
Yeah, I have additional photography, viewshed photography requests with the larger, with the upscaled balloon situation, which would be, number one would be the lookout above the hairpin turn at the bit on the ridge. I think you know where I mean. It's a major lookout point for tourists. And I would like to see a photograph from there. I would like to see a photograph.
Jane, is
yes.
this the Mohawk Mountain or something else that you're referencing?
When you go to the end of 299 and you make a right, you go up to the hairpin turn. At the head of the turn on your left is a lookout. Michael Musso knows where I'm talking about.
I do,
He's
yeah.
shaking his head. That's a major tourist stop. And I'd like to see an additional photograph with the scaled up balloons from there. Additionally, I'd like to see additional photographs from the climbing trails that are there's a parking lot. If you continue going up and turn right, there's a parking lot that serves all those hiking trails and the climbing trails. And I would like to see a photograph of the scaled up balloons from a climbing point of the ridge. The reason is that New Paltz is a climbing destination, and the gentleman here who is a guide that spoke publicly could probably attest to that. People come from all over the world to climb that ridge, and the views are very important when they're doing it, when they get up there. So I'd like to see a photograph from that.
That would be the West Traps parking lot, just to be clear.
Excuse me?
It's the West Traps parking lot?
Thank you. Thank you. But the trails come around all the way over and over the hairpin turn. So if you need something more specific on the climbing places, I can try to get that for you.
Yes, I would need something. I mean, the more specific we are, the more that it is that they're going to take a photo from the place that you want.
Okay, I will get more specifics from that as quickly as possible. I'll try to get those for you tomorrow, Rick.
All right.
Michael Musso had mentioned that he had a photograph from Mohawk Preserve at the closest point where the preserve juts out into the valley view. I'd like to make that more precise. I don't know where I can't sort of figure out where that is. And I'd like to also see that scaled up view from that. Are you talking about the top where that monument is, or where were you talking about, Michael?
Bear with me.
Sure.
Bear with me a second. So I did submit one of our secret related memos during the process here. So that was actually to the east of the park, just at the beginning of the park. So let me, if I could share a screen, that might be helpful. So it's really on the fringes, Jane, of what you're saying. The sites that you're suggesting, the hairpin turn, the West Traps parking lot. This was really further east of that area. Just to be clear.
So it's closer. It would be closer to, since it's further east to the site.
Yeah, I think where I took it from arguably is a little bit closer to the site. But where you're suggesting, there's probably more open views, but at much greater distance.
Right, I know, but those are major tourist areas.
Yeah, no.
You stand there and you look
acknowledging that.
down, and I mean, I'm not a climber or a hiker, but I drive there, and every time people come, I take them to see that particular view, because as we know, scenic views are one of the major tourist attractions of the area. And
no doubt.
I would like to see if we could see if it's visible, you know, or if it sticks out from that view. I would like to know, you know that. Mohonk Preserve, I could again be more specific. It seems, I thought it would be farther away rather than closer. But again, that may be just my lack of familiarity with the, being on foot in those places. Because I'm always in the car, I'm never on foot. Although others are mostly on foot and probably less in the car. Additionally, Route 208 between going north between 4455 and the Jansen bypass. In other words, when you're coming up from Gardner, where you have the top of Mohonk on your left and that beautiful ridge line that you see over all those fields, on your right, I would like to see what the view would look like from there. And then the last additional one, I would like to see a photograph of the from Route 32 and Jansen Road, where they intersect at that stoplight, because Jansen Road, as we know, is a major bypass to the town of Gardner from the thruway exit at exit 18. So that's a big, big corner. And I'd like to know if it would be visible from there. I saw it from Grandview Lane, but that's a major intersection that has a lot of traffic. So those would be my 5 requests for additional photos, again, of the balloons in greater scale than 4 feet and as close to the possible, actual scale, living room scale of the top of the tower as possible, so that we accurately can gauge it.
Yeah, if I could just add something to that, Jane, the last 2 that you mentioned, 208, I think, I'm not sure if you're implying traveling north on 208 from Gardner. There's a farm overpass sort of coming into New Paltz, so it would be on your left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the highest elevation of potential visibility of this, based on the balloon test and the view shed map. And on Route 32 and Jansen bypass, just would invite you to look back at that also, because I don't think there's any visibility at both of those, at either of those locations.
Are you talking about Dressel?
Yes. Farm, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's another major tourist spot. So I would still like to see that. I will certainly be happy to go back and take another look. I couldn't find those when I looked through at first, but I will go back. Thank you, Michael.
Right. Yeah, and my record during the balloon test is that the 150 foot was not visible from there. We did it on off leaf, but these, sometimes these things have a way of sneaking into view a little bit. But those last 2, I believe were looked at.
With the additional scale, I think that might, might or might not, I don't know. It would just, seems to me illogical to have something make a conclusion based on something that's 6 to 8 times smaller than what would actually be constructed. So if we could get closer to the scale of it, that would be great.
I would just like to put one thing on the record. We did do the prior visual analysis based on Mr. Musso's methodology that was done in coordination with the board. It was very detailed. It was very specific. We did everything exactly as was requested. And I just want to make sure that that's clear on the record that, we did follow Mr. Musso's report and methodology. We did follow everything required by the code. We did follow everything that is suggested in the state's manual on visual impact, and also the state's manual on evaluating visual impact in telecommunications facilities. And we did that as part of the record much earlier on. And I just want to make sure that that's clear for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that was clear to me. Thank you very much for stating that. I have been through it, and I would respectfully request the additional information for the purpose of the scoping document.
Okay, thank you. So, Rick, are you gonna be able to attach those to the various pieces of the numbers 1 through 5, 2 through 5, really?
There are places that I can put those in the draft scoping document to modify it into a final scope, yes.
Okay.
As you know, I have some other comments that the board has seen before. I can either go through those now or later, whenever you want me to.
All right, let's see if there's anyone else on the planning board that wants to comment on this. Lyle, I can't see you. I don't know if you want to make a comment. No, okay. Anyone else from the planning board that wants to comment now? Okay, Rick, thank you.
All right, I actually made redlined changes, and some of them I don't need to go over. It's just making sure the applicant's name is proper, the address is proper, things along those lines. I have made some small changes that you all have to the project description and background. The second paragraph on page 3, I think it is, 1.2 project description and background. The second paragraph of that I have modified, and this is similar to what Jane was talking about, one of her first comments. I'm proposing that it now read, the proposed wireless facility will provide personal wireless services and includes construction of a new 150-foot tall monopole and, unless waived, an as of right subsequent increase in such height to the greater of 10%, that is 15 feet, or the height of one additional antenna area plus up to 20 feet of separation from the nearest existing entrance, which would be a total of 28 feet. If the tower is approved with the proposed stealth tree option, there will be an additional 5 to 6 feet for the top quote unquote branches. There will be also associated equipment at the base of the monopole within a dedicated 4,225 square foot fenced area. I have made some changes to the project classification lead agency determination, where it lists A, B, and C as far as the positive declaration. I've simply modified that to be more consistent with the actual positive declaration language. And a lot of these are just minor changes that dates on tonight's scope session. description of the proposed action, which is 3.3, page 6. The page numbers may be a little bit off if I've added something and it pushes something onto the next page or something. It may be a little bit off, but I have it as page 6. 3.3, the second bullet. Project, it now reads project description, including proposed actions, changes to site, acreage of developed, and then inserting height of tower as proposed, including stealth tree option, and as allowed as an as of right subsequent approval with the citation for that.
Rick, can you include not only the height, but the diameter?
Yes, please.
Yes. Under that same 3.3, about the description should also address all aspects of the site development such as, and it had site layout and design, site design material, site access, site disturbance, and visual impacts. And what I am adding is that visual impacts comment, including previously provided and additional photos, balloon test photo simulations from the following additional vantage points, and I will incorporate Jane's additional vantage points in there. I have made some changes to 3.4, potential significant adverse environmental impacts. Again, really just to conform more closely to the language you have in your positive declaration. And the same with A, B, and C impacts. Mitigation measures, 3.6. It presently talks about several mitigation measures, monopole tower design, elimination of offer to allow town public safety antenna to co-locate. Not sure what that mitigation is. Is that to be that there's less of a tower there, shorter, or less antenna on there? But we'll find out when it's done. Reduced number of antennas, alternative access drive designs, and I've added 2 others. Reduce, and this is similar to what Jane has said, not similar, it's identical to what Jane had said on one of her points. Reduced height as proposed by the planning board's wireless consultant, HDR. That's the 140-foot reduction. And waiver of post-approval as of right increase in tower height as allowed by federal law. And again, the purpose in that is that subsequent as of right will not have an opportunity to have any seeker analysis with respect to the increased heights visual impact, because under federal law, the board must approve an application, and if you don't do it within the 60 days, there is a default approval. And since that's a possibility, unless the applicant is going to say that's not a possibility by waiving that option, then it amounts to seeker segmentation if it's not studied now. On 3.10, information to be included in the appendix of the DEIS, in addition to what's noted there, which was fairly detailed and welcomed. I have added HDR memos and Barton and Logitas memos. And then finally, I have done a new 3.11. And this is actually something that's required by the seeker regulations. And that is identification and description of the prominent issues considered in the lead agency's seeker environmental assessment form review and the reasons underlying the determination that such issues were not sufficiently environmentally significant for inclusion in the final scope. And I reference there to make it easy for the applicant to know which issues to address. It would be EAF questions 9A, B, C, D, 1, E and F and 15E. And that's all I have. And I will say, and I've said this to the board, but I think it is appropriate in an open session, is that I think that the applicant did a much better than average job in putting together the draft scoping document. I think it was a very good attempt at coming up with the draft scoping document, much better than a lot of other applicants ever do. And so I want to compliment the applicant for doing that. But I think that the changes that I've referenced and the ones that Jane has referenced will be added to that prior to it being finalized.
Thank you. So is there anyone else on our planning board that wants something else in this document? Amanda, I see that look.
Yeah, you know it. So I just want to say that the section that's called alternatives, to include and analyze the following alternatives. In looking at the seeker handbook, it describes alternatives as those opportunities to avoid or reduce the identified impacts and to be specifically addressed. So, and gives examples such as size, site, alternative technology, and which impacts a specified alternative would either eliminate or minimize. So with that in mind, on the tree cutting, I would like to propose that one alternative could be to evaluate the property for alternative sites.
Alternative access road?
Yeah, alternative, well, the road, but then where the tower is actually placed as well. You know, it was partially encroaching on the wetland buffer, and then the way to get to it requires going through a wooded area. So are there other opportunities to place that, still meeting setbacks and all that sort of thing, that would not involve the wetland buffer or the wooded area?
Okay.
And the only question I have is, we had two people from the public that mentioned the bees. Is there anything in there that we want to have studied?
Actually, I was going to think of that as well. Yes.
Yeah, there is literature out there about this, so I think it would be good to include this so that it's documented.
Yeah, I was going to include that as along with the, let me put it this way. We cannot do it with respect to what are the impacts of RF emissions on bees. But we certainly can include that as a predominant species with respect to the tree cutting. And that's where I would propose to put it. But we are precluded from, just as we are precluded from determining the impact on human health, we certainly cannot go ahead and have an analysis of the impact on bees.
And Rick, so, you know, we've been told that the height doesn't require by the FAA a light on top, but if it were to go to the full, I think 178 feet, that's potential, do we now start to get into the zone of needing that light?
I don't know that. Don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Mike, do you know the answer?
Oh, I'd have to look back, but I believe when they did the FAA filing, they went taller than 150. And usually in this area, it's a 200 foot above grade level.
Okay.
I do want to say something about the bees. I think that could be addressed in the enhanced ecological analysis, the one that the ENCB brought up. There's been a lot in the literature, neonicotinoid pesticides for one. Now, this was 10 years ago. A lot came out, and it was a hypothesis about cell antennas. But if somebody's going to talk about species, I think it could be put into there, because I don't think it's necessarily the impacts of tree clearing. It's actually the radiological effects, just like we look at strobing and bird migrations. So it's something that's adjacent to this, but if it's going to appease the board and the public as part of this process, I think it's appropriate to put into the ecological. And any trained ecological assessor is readily going to find the information they need on that.
Well, we can include it as what this project's impact would be on bees, but not, I don't think we can do so with respect to RF emissions.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'm telling you that as a legal matter, there's no way a court is going to say you're precluded from doing it with respect to humans, but it's okay to make them study it with respect to bees. It's just not going to happen. So they will have to just generally address the impact of the cellular tower on the bee population in the area, just like they would with respect to the spotted turtle.
Okay, thank you.
Adele?
Jane.
On another matter, I wanted to ask the other members of the planning board, I just throw this out there, how they felt about including the possibility of the silo shape as a third shape in this, because it only mentions the monopole and the fir tree. If that's helpful in some way, I would be, inclined to ask for that, but I would just wanted to see what other people thought.
I would like to hear what Mike Musso has to say on that, if he does, if that was a possibility that was looked at all.
I think there was a little bit of a discussion back through some emails with board members. My thought was that it might be out of character here. You remember this? If you look at water standpipes, I don't think there's any water standpipes like this in the town of New Paltz. But you look at the ratio height to diameter, and you'd really have to get a lot of bulk around this. And I don't know of any silos in the area. And this is me looking at, co-locating these in Orange County, in the Black Dirt region, and in some agricultural areas too. I know you have silos in the region, but a 150 foot or thereabouts is going to be a lot of bulk. And I'm not sure how the public's going to feel about that. But in the scoping document sections 3.6 and 3.7, it mentions only the monopine alternative. So I think they could kick in either an image or an example of this, along with the logistics that are, with it, with the anchoring, with the load, with the net bulk, which would be more than a conventional monopole, and it would be more bulk visually than the stealth tree, but that's in the eye of the beholder, right? So I think it would be good to add that to 3.6 and 3.7.
Thank you. Yeah, because I have no sense of dimensions on that or anything. When you say bulk, is it going to be 23 feet diameter, that kind of thing? I'd like to get some kind of idea of what the scale and size of it would be.
Right. So it has to go down around everything, right? It's a cylinder that's going to go straight down.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about those views between the trees, there's no dead space there. It's going to be one solid.
Right.
And whether it's painted, it's not going to look right during every season. It's going to change. But I think it's worth a review of that. And I think the applicant could pull something out of it. There are vendors of that technology, the stealthing technology, just like they are with stealth trees, that do look at that. But, I think, you're asking the right questions. You want to understand a little bit better what it's going to look like and how it might match up to one of the other options.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we've done it. Rick, we have enough to close this session and move forward?
Yeah, I think what would be appropriate, because we'd like to move this along as quickly as possible, and you only have monthly meetings, is if you will go ahead and authorize the adoption of a final scope based upon the draft scope that was permitted as modified by the comments agreed to by the planning board this evening. I then will take charge of putting that actually together and sending it as the final scope to the applicant and the zoning board of appeals, and it will also go on the website as the final scope.
Do we get to see it before that happens?
Yes.
Or simultaneously, or how do you propose that?
I thought it was pretty clear as to the changes, but if you want me to circulate it among the planning board members, I could do that, and then each one of you can't discuss it back and forth, but each of you can send to me your comments on it, and I will make the determination as to what I believe is the sense of the board on that, if that's acceptable to everybody.
Is that okay, Adele?
Sure. I mean, as long as, we say, okay, we're going to do this within 24 hours and everybody
Right.
gets it, looks at it, and, so that we don't hold anything up. I think that's, yeah. And Jane, you're concerned about approving the locations of the photos or something? No.
You're muted,
Sorry.
girl.
No, I'm trying to determine 2 of the locations that were up in the air. I mean, I know approximately, but I want to pinpoint them for you.
Okay, if you could get
I'll
that.
give that to Rick, yes.
Okay.
So I have another question for Rick. The ZBA is an involved agency, correct?
That's correct.
So were they had the opportunity to also provide or comment, or do they have some kind of involvement in the scoping document before it's like final? Or?
Their opportunity was tonight,
So they didn't choose to, okay.
right, or submitting something before then.
Okay.
But we haven't heard from the CBA at all, to my knowledge.
Okay, so who wants to make that motion?
So move.
Okay, so we need the motion. Do we need to repeat that, Rick?
No, but we just need a second and a vote, that's it.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Matt? Any discussion on Rick's motion? On Rick's
Well,
suggested motion?
Right.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I think we're set. We ready to adjourn?
Could I just make one closing statement? We just would request a copy of the documents that were mentioned. I know there was a mention to a 2017 update to, I guess, a planning board. I'm not sure what it was referred to by the ENCB.
Habitat assessment guideline.
We could just have a copy of that. If we could have a copy of the emails that were mentioned to give us some insight into the discussion regarding the silo that I think was mentioned. Also a copy, obviously, of the final scope as soon as that's available, so we could submit the draft EIS as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted, if you could send me a copy of the study that you referenced, the updated one in 2017, and I can then forward it on to the applicant.
Yes, Rick, I will get that and forward it to you. I have already sent the letter to you by email.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, I got that.
all set. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. No discussion. Yeah, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good night, and thank you, everyone. Thanks, members of the public
Good night,
the
everyone.
public for all of this. And good night. Have a good night.
Good night.